Sister Aisha, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you?
Well, thank you very much. It's very good of you to come and see us tonight. Such a bitter,
It's freezing, hence the
very cold night in
Yes.
Cardiff.
Welcome to Wales.
Well, the whole of England is
Well,
freezing.
that's true, to be fair. Yeah.
Now, you embraced Islam at the age of 20.
Yes.
How did you know about Islam? How were you introduced to it?
Oh gosh, it's quite a roundabout answer actually. I am actually Welsh, even though I have a very English accent. I was born in Neath, which is further west down the M4. And you have a very strong accent there. But when I was 6, my mum decided to move to London because she married my stepfather at the time. So I grew up in London. And I suppose that's where, well, that is where my interaction with anyone of colour really was. And I grew up in East London, which is very multicultural. Everyone who knows East London will know exactly what I'm talking about.
A lot of Bengalis.
Yeah, the Bengalis, Pakistanis, Sikhs, Hindus, Punjabis, everybody's there. You know, Jamaicans, Moroccans, Algerians.
Well, East London was the original London, wasn't it?
I think
in
so.
the very old days.
Yeah, I think that's where the Bow Bells song comes from, and Shoreditch and things like that. Yeah, subhanallah. So we moved to East London, and as I just said, that was pretty much my first time seeing anyone of colour, and I didn't really know that at the time because my family weren't. I'd like to think they're not racist. We weren't brought up like that. But looking back, I realised that was the first interaction with anyone of colour in my primary school. As I said, I was 6. So, I had very eclectic mix of people. Very eclectic mix of people in my class. And a couple of my teachers throughout the years were people of colour and also Muslim as well, alhamdulillah. My kind of interest in Islam grew mostly in secondary school or high school, where I was an ethnic minority in my school. So everybody around me was a person of colour. There were very few white people or, in my school where I went to, because my school is in an area called Forest Gate. And again, very close to Green Street, which is a predominantly South Asian street of shops and so on and so forth, like Lenga shops, sari shops, as well as Islamic shops and so on and so forth. So it was very populated by those communities. And my interest in Islam grew from there. Even though I did have a little bit of interaction in primary school, this is where it really kind of took off for me.
Did you have Muslim friends?
Yeah, pretty much most of my friends were Muslim. The largest denomination or demographic rather in the school was Muslim, of various backgrounds. You had the Gujarati community, you had the Pakistani community, and like you said, the Bengali community, Bangladeshi community. And many of them were my friends, and I was very impressed, I think would be the appropriate word. But what I saw, for example, what I mean by that is when it came to Ramadan, they would fast. And, coming from a background where religion is actually something you may do as a child. I went to Sunday school before I moved to London, which is like the Christian equivalent of a madrasa, Bible stories, that kind of thing. But that was it. That was basically it. And the rest of our Christianity was putting up a Christmas tree at Christmas and maybe having some chocolate eggs at Easter. That was it, So I was really impressed at the commitment and the faith, the iman they had. These young people had in them at that age. I mean, they weren't, don't get me wrong, they weren't, angels at all. They did things which a lot of teenagers do, but when it came to Allah, when it came to Islam, they were like, no nonsense, mashallah. So I was very impressed with what I saw. And again, comparing it to Christianity, it just made sense. Islam just made sense to me. I didn't really have to question much or kind of counter question things. It was kind of like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I get that. For example, I believed in the Torah because I was taught about the Torah. I believed in the Bible, taught about the Bible. And then for them to teach me about the Quran, I was like, okay, a trilogy, if you like, that makes sense. Similarly, about how Jesus is a prophet, peace be upon him, not God. That made complete sense to me because even in Sunday school, I don't think I really believed he was God or the Son of God. I'm not even sure which one we were taught, to be honest with you. It didn't really make sense. So when I was taught these things by my friends, either just in passing or I would ask questions or maybe visit in their homes, it just made sense to me. I didn't really have to think too much about it.
So when was the decisive moment?
So that's a bit of the decisive moment when I decided I want to convert was when I was 16, but it took me 4 years to convert.
Ooh.
But there was a moment I was 14 actually, because I was actually very unhappy as a child. I didn't have a very good home life. And I was bullied quite a lot. So my confidence was through the floor. But I was also a child who would think a lot. I would think about the universe. I would think about why we're here. I had a lot of existential questions at the age of like 14. Who does that, you know? And I remember one time we went to Euro Disney as a class trip in year 9. So we were 14, 15. And I'm an absolute wimp. I don't do rides, okay? I will hold your handbag. I'll hold your coat. You go ahead without me. It's fine. So I remember while my rest of my friends went on Space Mountain, which is an absolute no-no for me, I decided to walk around Euro Disney with 2 of my friends who were Muslim. One was Gujarati, one was Bengali. And we were talking about the meaning of life. We were 14. Talking
At
about
Euro Disney.
Yeah, Euro Disney in France,
places.
of all places, yes, subhanAllah. And I don't remember all the conversation because obviously it was such a long time ago now, but I do remember asking a question about, but what if there's no God, i.e. what's the point of it all? Why are you doing all of this? And again, I can't really remember what they answered, but I remember answering on my own behalf and saying that even if there wasn't, I'll be living a better and cleaner life.
Oh.
And again, fast forward to, I made a decision when I was 16 that I wanted to, but it took a lot of time to research. And if I'm honest, I was a little bit distracted, which we don't have to go into, but yeah, I was a little bit distracted, but that distraction kept me away from all of haram. So I've never been to a club. I've never been drunk. And I've never taken drugs.
Subhanallah.
Not that I'm perfect, I'm not, I promise you. But I've not done these things.
Nobody's perfect.
Right, exactly. But that distraction in some way was a catalyst for me converting as well. I'll give you an example. So I remember I used to work in Liverpool Street Station in London, and I actually got the job a day or 2 after the 7/7 bombs went off in London.
Oh,
that was 2005.
2005.
Yeah. And by this point, I had been reading books, I had been researching about Islam. I mean, I had stopped eating pork, not that I ever did much anyway. And I stopped all gelatin. So I was checking my food, I was checking my sweets, I was doing all of those things because I was preparing myself to be, you know, for the conversion that would be impending whenever it would be. And
But the 7/7 didn't put you off?
No, because I knew that wasn't Islam. And the same with 9/11, knew that wasn't Islam. I was 16 when that happened. And I remember watching 9/11 on the news, coming home after school thinking, oh my goodness, it looks like a movie.
Who would do this?
Yeah, and it looks like something that you'd see in a Hollywood movie, you know? And I just knew that's not Islam. I don't think any religion that professes peace, that they wouldn't do that. That's just not Islam. You know, it's a no-brainer, if you like. And going back to the time when I was working in Liverpool Street Station is a good 15-minute brisk walk from East London Mosque. Okay, so you're around the corner from Aldgate East, you're around the corner from Whitechapel, you're around the corner from those areas. And so I would see this mix of people again in London, you know, walking through the station. And there was a period of time where I thought, okay, fine, if I'm going to convert, I know I have to wear hijab. And that's something I have to get used to because I had this issue with how I look, given that I was bullied. So for me, it still is actually.
Why were you bullied?
Boys not being very nice, picking on me. Yeah, for many, many years. People in the street said horrible things, which I can't repeat, on buses and whatnot, about how I look. Kids and people aren't very nice, are they?
Well, you look okay. Well, what's the problem?
Hope so. Well, I don't know, but I was picked on a lot. And so my self-esteem wasn't the best. And so I decided to go to Green Street, the same road I discussed earlier, and buy hijab. And I bought a hijab and I started wearing that before I took my Shahada.
Subhanallah.
It was just, and I was dressing modestly anyway, because I was never really into that kind of stuff. I didn't really get why. And at the end of the day, I'm not one of those women who thinks that, oh no, you should be absolutely covered up because it's your fault that men are the way they can be. No. But I just thought for myself, my personal well-being that it's better for me to dress modestly, and I thought it was more classy. If you dress modestly, it's more appropriate. Just generally, you know, you present yourself in a better way.
Over 100 years ago, most women dressed modestly everywhere.
Exactly, you know. So it's just, yeah, in these last few decades that things have, you know, declined. Same with men, though. You know, fashion I think is just gone all over the shop at the moment. And so I wore that to work. In Claire's Accessories. It was Claire's Accessories, there you go, in Liverpool Street Station. So I wore it to work. And I also remember a few months later, so I had my 20th birthday in September. And come October, I was in work again. And I was in my hijab, obviously, and I would just daydream all throughout my shift. My manager must have got sick of me. I was daydreaming throughout my shift of just wanting to be a Muslim, like the longing.
Is that an urge?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, subhanAllah.
You were reading at the time?
I was reading, I was learning, I so many different things. I read, not even like books of knowledge per se, but things like From My Sister's Lips by Naima B. Roberts, for example. I got gifted that, and I read that on the tube, and I remember actually looking back on it, I remember reading that on the tube, and what I realise now, they were Muslim, but they were looking at me kind of smiling, thinking, oh, she might convert. And I did, so there you go. Mashallah. But yeah, lots of different things. I can't remember exactly what, but so many books. So many books. My head was stuck in a book. And then, yeah, so I contacted certain people to organise for me to take my Shahada, because at that time I was absolutely terrified of going to the mosque. Like, terrified.
Why?
Because, one, you know, I only knew that East London Mosque had space for women. And two, it's so big. It's huge. And oh my God, what if I walk through the wrong door? Or, you know, the fear of doing something wrong or etiquetely wrong, with wrong etiquette rather, you know, it's a real thing for a newbie, you know. And so I think the phone call to East London Mosque was made on the Tuesday. And I remember my little sister at the time, who's now 31, but she was 12, she was helping me recite the Shahada, because at the time it was a tongue twister.
Your own sister?
My little sister, yeah, because her teacher at the time was Pakistani. So she was helping me recite the Shahada, practicing the Shahada.
Is she a Muslim now?
That's an interesting story in its own, and that's one for her to tell. Yeah, may Allah guide her, you know.
I mean,
all of them, actually, all my family. But yeah, come Sunday, I remember saying to my mum, okay, Mum, you know, along the lines of, Mum, you know, when I come back, you know, I'm going to go to the mosque to take my Shahada. When I come back, I'll be Muslim. And it was kind of like, okay. You know,
she didn't mind?
She knew it was on the cards. There were certain things where she just knew, you know.
So the conversion did not make it difficult for you at home?
Kind of. So my dad, as I kind of mentioned earlier, it was my mum and my stepfather who were together at the time. So my mum and my father divorced when I was very young. He's still here, and he remained here in Wales. So the relationship with him was very much a phone call relationship, and I would only see him maybe once or twice a year. It was never often.
Did you tell him?
I did, yes. And the first thing he said was on the phone, he used my actual name. He said, Kaylee, that's my actual name, but I just don't use it. I prefer Aisha. Kaylee, I'm disappointed you changed your religion, because as far as I'm concerned, the only God is Jesus. Bearing in mind, we don't come from a very religious family, but because of the culture, the very working class Welsh culture, and of the 50s, 60s, whatever it was, you know, very old school, again, to use that phrase, very old school. For him, it must have been an absolute whoa. And if you also recall as well, around about 2005, I think there was a lot of stuff going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, if I can recall rightly. And actually what happened then the year later, so I took my Shahada October 30th, 2005. And I never kept it from anybody. I was always open, I was very honest. Probably naively so, actually. You know, that young naivety, especially when you're 20, you think you know it all, when actually really
enthusiastic don't. Also.
Oh, yeah, very enthusiastic. But again, just kind of thinking everyone's going to think it's rainbows and unicorns when actually it's not. They have an opinion, you know. And so fast forward to 2006, I came down to Wales for Christmas. I think by this point, my older sister had already moved back home. because she missed home, and she's 5 years older than me, so she missed Wales, so she came home already. But I was staying with my father and I was staying with my grandfather. My grandfather was in his 90s. And I remember I said how old school they were. So I didn't have to wear hijab, obviously, in the house. And I never left the house for 3 days. I was bored out of my mind, if you want me to be honest, so bored. But I prayed and I never hid my prayers from them. I answered any questions that they had openly, honestly, didn't elaborate on them. I just said, this is this, X is Y, whatever. That doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean? But when it came to Christmas, so I came down about 2 days before Christmas, so third day, Christmas Day, I had a pescatarian Christmas dinner. So I had fish. Yeah, of course, as you do. And my sister came, but it was the evening which was problematic. So it must have been about 10 o'clock in the evening, obviously really dark.
It's Christmas night.
Christmas night. And I remember being in the living room, and in the corner here, obviously the way I'm looking, the corner here was my grandfather's chair. You know, your grandfather, your dad, you know, they have a chair, don't they? Your parents, they have a chair. So my grandfather was here, and I remember the TV was in front of me, and my dad was sat on the floor with either a pint of bitter or a pint of lager. I don't know the difference, and I don't know which one. I haven't got a clue. But he had alcohol. And again, the news was on. And as I mentioned, there were big world events going on at the time in the Middle East. And I think it was Iraq. I don't know if it was, I can't recall properly, but I think it was Iraq. And I remember...
Iraq, if you remember, the Americans invaded in 2003.
Right, yeah.
So we were living the repercussions of that.
Exactly. So I remember there was a lot going on. And my dad remarked, Islam's an evil religion.
Oh, he said that.
Something like that. Yeah, I think that might be verbatim. I can't really remember because obviously it's 19 years ago. And I instantly kind of reacted to that. And, you know, I know why. I mean, the thing is, it's really difficult to articulate to people why you took your shahada sometimes, or why Islam, why this, why that, when they're so brainwashed, you know, by the media and whatever they see on TV, because they have no interaction with actual people who living people, you know. Whereas obviously I grew up with them. I know what they were like. I knew how hospitable their cultures were. Every single culture, no matter which one it is, you're all hospitable. It's amazing, you know. It puts us British people to shame, honest to God. You'd be lucky to get a cup of tea and a biscuit. You know, I know all the good stuff. I know about the real Islam. I'm living it myself. So to articulate that to my father, who just sees war, destruction, death, or whatever is being portrayed on the TV, how do you put that into words as a 21-year-old who doesn't really have much knowledge?
You need to know the background to all of this to explain it. Right.
And it's only over time where you kind of learn that. And I'm still learning. That, for example,
like
about
I remember
Palestine.
once I was asked by an FBI officer, what would you say about terrorism? He asked me. I said to him, what do you mean by terrorism? And we went through an exchange of defining terms and applying these terms to reality to see if we understand what we are talking about. And this is what you need to do with these people. Absolutely. But I think when you're young and you don't have that knowledge, you don't have the words for that, you don't know how to articulate that, because you don't really know what you're talking about, even though you know Islam's correct. It's a weird place to be. It's a weird situation to be, because kind of like, well, I'm right, but how do I tell you this? How do I explain this to you? And so what happened then, we got into a bit of an argument, or at least, you know, a louder discussion, shall we say. And again, being old school, because I'm well aware this is my father, and I'm still well aware this is my grandfather, i.e. my elders and my relatives. Despite that. You have to respect them. Yes. Yeah, but at the same time, I also thought, well, now they've crossed the line, because that's my religion and my religion comes first. So I remember that they obviously weren't backing down. My grandfather in particular, I remember this to this day, he leant forward in his armchair and he used my other name. He said, Kaylee, in the morning, pack your things and go. Really? 100%. And I was like, what you just said? I'm like, sorry, what? And he's like, in the morning, in this kind of tone as well, pack your things and go. Oh. And I was floored, I think, you know, to use a colloquial expression, I was gobsmacked. And so I thought, well, no, I'm not going to go in the morning because I've got Fajr to pray. I'm going to go now.
So I went into my bedroom where I was staying, called my mother. We've also had interesting quote unquote discussions on Islam and religion and God and whatever. But I phoned her and she was staying with her father, my other grandfather, in a town called Buryport, which was approximately 30 miles away from where I was. She was disgusted, absolutely shocked and disgusted what was happening. My grandfather, my other one, is an absolute atheist, but he was also disgusted. And so they invited me to go to theirs. And when I tell you that my father literally shut the door behind me, closed the curtains and went to bed and left me out in the cold, that is exactly what happened. So
must be painful.
It was. I never saw my grandfather again because he passed away during that time. And it was 8 years later that my father actually came and spoke to me and saw me. I had children by then. So yeah, it was just, yeah,
Are
it was
you
really...
on good terms with him now?
We were, but unfortunately, I think his mental health has declined. He's also not on very good terms with my older sister as well. It's just his mental health, unfortunately, and whatever he's dealing with himself. I think especially losing his father, i.e. my grandfather, you know, that was hard for him. It was very, very difficult for him because he was a carer for him for a long time. And I think he may feel isolated. He may feel like we don't care when we do, but it's a case of at the moment, it's really difficult trying to get through to him. For example, my sister has invited him for her birthday meal and he said no. So what can we do, you know? It's difficult, but we did, generally, yes, we did, you know, rekindle our relationship. And, you know, when I moved back to Wales, because I moved back 4 years ago, he was over the moon, you know. At first, I don't really know what's happened since then because I would visit him regularly with the children and whatnot. But unfortunately, I think his mental health has unfortunately taken a turn for the worst.
Now, you told me that it was because of the community in London, in East London, that you started opening your eyes to Islam and searching. Now, after you converted, what sort of experience have you had with the Muslim community?
Do you want the good, the bad, or the ugly? When I first took Shahada in 2005, there weren't many organisations in London. IERA, for example, didn't exist. If you most likely have heard of IERA.
Yes.
It didn't exist. That was incepted in 2007. I was pretty much a lone ranger. For the first couple of years, it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was really difficult. It was.
You felt lonely?
Extremely. Weirdly enough, I had about 12 witnesses when I took my Shahada. I had a big group of people and we went for dinner afterwards. But one of them was, at the time, I considered my best friend. And she was actually one of the ones I was walking with during that conversation in Euro Disney. But I don't know, we just drifted apart and I really felt I needed her. To go to the mosque, I was still scared to go to the mosque. It's a really big deal. It's a big deal when you don't, it's a completely different culture, remember, as well, and different etiquette. So I don't think I went, and I had to learn how to pray by myself. And back in those days, DVDs, you know, it was all about DVDs. So I learned from a DVD how to pray. I think it wasn't until about roughly 2011, I properly learned basic tajweed. You know, and I still try my best now to learn as much as possible.
Although
to improve
they do
my
run circles in various mosques and centers for reverts.
They do, but you know, when you don't know anyone who knows this information, how are you supposed to find that out? And again, this was 2005, 2006.
And you were terrified too.
Yeah, and this was prior to Instagram and social media and probably smartphones. You know,
True.
I probably had a BlackBerry. I don't know what I had then.
They had a small Nokia.
Yeah, I miss them. I miss the Nokias. Nostalgia. So it was a different world. It wasn't as accessible and readily available as it is now.
Yeah, it's much better now.
Oh,
isn't
100%. You know, there's so much available now. So it was difficult, and also finding my path. I mean, I'm still on the journey now, nearly 20 years later. I'm still finding, quote unquote, myself as a Muslim, because if you think about it, when anyone takes a Shahada at a very young age, I mean, I was pretty much still a child. I just come out of my teens.
True.
And I'm still learning about the ways of life in general and my religion and dealing with my family and you know, it was just so many different things I had to deal with. And when I did eventually meet people, and that was usually through the ISOCs in universities, I was told, you know, this is the correct way and that's the correct way. Like, this madhab is okay, that madhab, no, stay away from them. Stay away from the Sufis, stay away from these people, whoa. And actually, I was very conservative, shall we say, when I eventually got into kind of like a rhythm of things. I became very conservative. I wouldn't clap. I wouldn't, oh gosh, what else? I wouldn't celebrate birthdays. Very Salafi.
You took a strict
Very.
path.
And it's not sustainable. I wouldn't advise it at all for any convert.
It goes against fitra.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Really does.
Islam is simple. It's not as rigid as some people portray it.
Exactly. And I learned that the long and hard way, and I look back and I do regret certain decisions. But again, I was young, and I did what I did with the tools and the knowledge I had at the time, right? So, you know, if I took my Shahada now, I wouldn't be, and if I knew what I knew, I wouldn't be as strict and as black and white as I was back then, especially with my family.
But by the way, I mean, your journey is not unique in that sense.
Of course.
I've spoken to quite a few brothers and sisters who seem to have gone through similar stages.
Yeah.
So apparently it's natural, it's normal.
It is, but it's it's all a test, isn't it?
Because it's a journey of discovery.
Yeah, exactly. That's 100% it. Because even without Islam, I would have been discovering myself.
Yeah.
So it's just facet upon facet upon facet of discovery and finding myself. And I only feel, funny enough, I feel more myself since I've left London, actually. I feel like I'm not around those kind of communities because they're very strong, especially in East London. Yes, you have a very strong Hanafi community as well, but you also have a very strong, at least quote unquote, soft Salafi community who are very, I do think they're judgmental, especially when it comes to women. And again, that's a whole topic of conversation, but I feel more me. I am a British Muslim. I'm not from the Middle East. I love the amalgamation of cultures I've adopted over time. In my everyday conversation, I will use Urdu, Bengali and Punjabi words in my conversation, as well as bits of Welsh, because I am Welsh. And
Arabic.
Yeah, and Arabic as well. So it's all a little sprinkle here and there, you know, like literally the icing on the cake, the sprinkles and the icing on the cake. And I love that. And I do appreciate that I grew up in London, because I think it's taught me a lot. And obviously that is where I took my Shahada, although obviously I would have become Muslim wherever I am in the world. You know, if Allah wants you to be Muslim, you could be on an igloo somewhere. And
True.
It makes no difference.
Well, alhamdulillah.
SubhanAllah.
And, Sister Aisha, it's a great pleasure.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you for having me. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.